Hi, everyone. Kathy Beltran with Sacred Dance with Trance. I am super excited to have Sandra Champlain with us here today. She is the host of We Don't Die Radio, author of the book We Don't Die, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. Sandra has a lot of going on. She has Facebook groups, pages, events, everything's going on. But the reason why I wanted to have Sandra here is because she is an ambassador for everything I'm doing. She is pushing trance and physical mediumship. She is pushing it out to the world. And there's so many events happening with her. And I also want to talk about her own development. But at this point, I definitely wanted to have her on the show here today. So everybody, welcome Sandra. And thank you, Sandra, for being here with us today.
Oh, hi, Kathy, and hi, everybody. I'm so thrilled to be here with you guys.
Oh, my goodness. So Sandra, I know, okay, so Sandra has this YouTube channel, We Don't Die Radio, but she has like over 15,000 members right now. She's done, to date, 331 interviews. And the work that she does to help other people is just amazing. And you do this in your spare time, right, Sandra?
Yeah, that's right. I'm a chef, day job. My mom and I have a catering business, and we work with race car teams. So I am an unlikely ambassador for the spirit world and for people, because I never believed in any of this. So I had to go on my own journey, as my book title says, A Skeptic's Discovery of Life After Death. So in my free time, and I learn what I can, I share what I can develop as much as I can. And it would have never happened had I not had a very painful experience, which was the death of my dad. So be forewarned, your most painful experiences can turn into the very best things that happen to you in your life. And I feel like I'm a living demonstration of that. So I'm proud to call myself an ambassador for all.
You definitely are. You definitely are. And we usually start these interviews by asking how did you get on the path to mediumship? How did you get on the path to becoming this ambassador that you're now? And
Sure.
I like to go back to when you were younger, if that's where we're going to go.
Yeah, we can go way back. As a kid, I grew up, my dad was an airline pilot and my mom a travel agent, and we lived a pretty regular life. Although anytime there was mention of anybody psychic or mediumistic or whatever, those kind of things, my parents were just like, none of that's real, kids. Don't ever believe in any of that. You have to see it and taste it and touch it and smell it and hear it to know it exists. And so as a very young person, I had no interest in those kind of things. I didn't even believe they were real, so I wouldn't even entertain them. The older I got, getting out of college and things, I'd meet people that would talk about angels and fairies and afterlife and stuff. And I literally would laugh at these people thinking, oh, these poor people, there's no proof in any of that. But if that's what carries them through life, good for them. So that's who I was. I was kind of nasty about it, but secretly I'd, think not such great things when I'd go into Barnes and Noble or Borders books and see people in the New Age or spiritual section. So for myself, it was back in the mid-90s that I developed a terrible fear of dying. I couldn't go to bed at night without thinking, if this was my last night, what happens? Where would I go? Do I go anywhere? And it just developed, Kathy, as to this incredible fear of the unknown. So secretly, I started studying and looking, is there any evidence of the afterlife to calm my fears? Very, very secretly, because again, the world knew me as somebody who was kind of more than skeptic, a little bit nasty to people that believed. And so very slowly, I'd start gathering information. I grew up going to Catholic school and went to Catholic church every Sunday. And even though I was Catholic, just having a faith in the afterlife didn't do it for me. So I started studying other major world religions and was fascinated that they all seemed to believe in the afterlife, but nobody really had that proof that would help me totally believe. And eventually I was led to a class in mediumship. I had seen a medium do a stage show, convinced that this was just something fun to do, but whoever the person was as the medium was just after people's money. But I witnessed a really pure person give many, many contacts, and it wasn't about money. It wasn't about any of that. And they were so specific that I thought, I want to learn this. So I actually took a class in mediumship very secretly, told people I was going to like a self-empowerment weekend. And what I was really doing was to see for myself if mediumship is real. So in the course, the very first thing that had happened to me, I just have to paint the picture.
Yeah.
Here I was back in the 90s, by this time it was actually 2001, I think. But I had my khakis on and my polo shirt, and I was surrounded by people that were wearing angel wear, you know, the gypsy dresses and things. And I thought, oh my gosh, where am I? And the instructor had told us a little bit about the spirit world and how our loved ones are still alive. They still have bodies. They're very much like we are, except for they're, you know, if you're overweight, you're skinny or healthy. If you have glasses, you don't have glasses. If you are ill, you're well. You can pick your very best age. And so she gave us a couple of details about how we would do a medium reading. And so she says, we're not really going to do a medium reading now. We're just going to pretend, just so everybody can feel like what it's like on the court doing a medium reading. So she had everybody take a partner. And of course, I didn't know anybody in the room. And I take this woman's hands. And at that point, she says, close your eyes and imagine you're connecting heart to heart, and you create a loving light around you. And she says, invite your partner's loved one to stand behind your partner. And she says, just make it up. Give them a name. What do they look like? Is it on the mom's side, dad's side? Who is this person? And so she said, with your eyes closed, just make up a person. Just, you know, try to get your feet wet, what we're going to do eventually. So I'm creative, I think, being a chef. And so I simply made up that standing behind my partner, and of course I'm verbalizing this with my eyes closed. I said, you have a grandfather with you. It's your mom's dad. He was a fisherman in Denmark. Now, where I got this information, I don't know, but I saw a fishing boat. I heard Denmark. His name is Jan. He's got a big gap between his front teeth. He's got blonde hair, blue eyes, kind of wind-burnt skin. And in my mind's eye, I'm seeing puffing away on a cigarette. And I said, and he died of lung cancer. And then she said, there's usually a message that comes through. So, you know, I just made up that he never told his own daughter that he loved her and would like you to give the message. He was just this real tough dad. So Kathy and your viewers, no lie, I let go of this woman's hands. I opened my eyes, and she's got streams of tears going down her cheeks. Her grandfather's name was Jan. He was a fisherman in Denmark. He died of lung cancer. This woman had heard stories that her dad was not affectionate, never said the words, I love you. And so I delivered, that was my very first mediumship reading to a person. And it was in that moment that I knew there really is something to this.
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, I know. And then from there, unfortunately, the rest of the weekend, I was incorrect in my medium readings. I'd have a couple of times that I'd get some juicy nuggets, but I think because I knew I was making it up, I had no fear. And I've been around enough mediums and taken enough courses to realize when fear and our own ego steps in, the spirit world does not have a clear channel to get through. So that's something I always wrestle with. I still take the occasional mediumship course, but I do wrestle with my own fear of being wrong and things. But I think the spirit world.
What a beautiful exercise.
Yeah. Oh, it was great.
And be completely right about everything. And you're like, oh my God, I'm completely hooked now. Like, I've got to find out more. I've got to do this, you know?
Yeah. I think the spirit world, whether it's having your first trance experience or your first medium experience, they give us a taste of what's possible. And then it's for us to go home and sit, for us to go home and develop. Now, I didn't choose to develop as a medium. I was very busy in life, but what I chose to do is continue searching about the afterlife. So Kathy, you name it. I have studied trance. I've studied physical mediumship. I've studied near-death experiences. I've studied all kinds of things, reincarnation and those deathbed visitations and EVPs. And, you know, I've done a lot of work with electronic voice phenomena. And now we've got our friend Sonia Rinaldi, who's in Brazil, who's actually capturing images of people in the afterlife when she takes some different kinds of photographs of static and things like that. So all of this great knowledge I had developed, but never, or I'd received, but I never shared it with anyone because I had too much fear of being thought of as one of those weirdo people. But my dad got very ill with cancer and died 10 years ago. And it was his death that actually had me start researching grief and why we grieve. And I found out that our body has a biological change. We lose very healthy neurotransmitters, and it explains so much about our mood swings, our anger, our loss of memory, and so many other things that I created just like a good service audio called How to Survive Grief and posted it on Facebook. And within a couple of months, it had gone viral. And people started writing me that not only did it help ease their pain and give them understanding about the grieving process, but Kathy, so many wrote me that they chose not to commit suicide because of my words. That's pretty big. And I was able to sum up what are some of the thoughts we have in our brains while we grieve. And people would think, that was them, or, it was their own baggage and want to end their own lives, when they realized it was all part of the grieving process, and they chose not to, and they chose to write me. That's when I thought I had a moral responsibility to get these words out. So I thought way back when, if I had the courage, and I always knew the book would be called We Don't Die, but if I had the courage to share my journey and then strategically slip in a chapter on grief, because I think all human beings will eventually have the question, well, who am I? What happens to me when I die? Is there a bigger picture? And then I just felt like people need to know what happens during the grieving process. And then also, if we don't die, who the heck are we? So my book is also about how to have a powerful life while we're here.
Well, I love it. I mean, it's amazing how you dived into all these different subjects, and the work that you're currently doing in your YouTube channel, all the interviews. How did that start? What led you to there?
Well, again, I think it's the spirit world in disguise. I had a man that I had a massive crush on that wanted to learn how to do a podcast. Now, it never ended up into a relationship. Oh, well. But I helped this man start a business podcast. And then all of a sudden, the idea came from me, of course, planted from the spirit world, that I could interview people about my favorite subject, which was getting evidence of the afterlife, and simply upload them to iTunes and YouTube. Never having known that these conversations that I recorded, 99% of them sitting in my PJs in my bedroom, would turn into the world's largest podcast on the afterlife. And so when I'm home in between my travels, I'll record an episode or a few. It depends on how much time I have, and then air them when I can. And I find people like yourself, you've been a guest, people that have a passion for the afterlife, have stories of why they believe and can share with others, and also how to have a great life while we're here. So I just started sharing them, figured out how to put them on YouTube, how to put them on iTunes. And then it just naturally started being shared amongst listeners. I've never advertised it other than a few Facebook posts. Oh,
goodness.
That's right. I could get it. Hello, Kathy.
I'm looking for you.
I'll take a sip of water while you're doing your business.
Okay, sorry about that. I had some technical difficulty here, so let us continue on with this. So one of the things, I love the work that you do. I love all the interviews that you do, and it's beautiful work. And what I've noticed, and this has been at least a couple years now, if not more, that you kind of started focusing on trance and physical mediumship. How did you get involved in that? How did that start opening up for you?
It's an interesting story. Trance and physical happened at two different times. Trance happened when I had wanted to learn more about mediumship and kind of get over my fear. And I took a course at the Arthur Findlay College on mediumship. It was a general mediumship week. And there's a beautiful evidential and trance medium called Eileen Davies, who gave a demonstration in front of the group. And it was big, maybe 100 people that were there. And I had no idea what she was doing with her eyes closed and why people were sitting next to her. And out of this soft-spoken woman's mouth came three voices, three distinct personalities. One was an Asian man, one sounded like a Native American person, and then one was a woman who would have lived in the South many, many years ago named Ula, I think is her name. I think that's her name. But anyway, three distinct personalities, all spreading words of inspiration. And I was mind blown. What in the heck is this? I had no idea what it was. And that's when I started finding out this is what trance mediumship is, and was absolutely fascinated. And over the course of that course, we could do some different things in the evening. And I so desperately wanted to be part of the trance group, but they said, no, you have no experience in mediumship. You can't do it. So I was very disappointed in that. And it wasn't until I've always had a love for Tony Stockwell, the medium. And I had found many of his videos on YouTube, and I thought, man, this guy's really great. And of course, he's handsome, right? So I watched all of them. And I searched him, and he was doing a trance weekend at the Omega Institute in Rhinebeck, New York. And beginners were welcome.
Wow, nice.
So I knew whatever this trance thing was, I wanted to be a part of it. And just to give you, it was a 5-day course, but one of the things that happened for me personally was that, we'd seen Tony do a trance demonstration. He had given us a lot of sitting in the power exercises, but it came point for us to attempt trance with a group of 3 people. So we were each in trios. And of course, I'm the new girl, and I knew that there was no way that I would be able to give any kind of a trance anything. So I said, I'll go first and just, get over it, because it's much easier sometimes to go first. And so with my eyes closed and following his lead, and of course, he, like many of the other teachers, say, get your mouth moving. You can say something like Spirit wants to say. And then even if it's 99% Sandra, 1% spirit world, it's okay. Okay, so he gave us a visualization. We could ask someone to step into our energy, and gave permission for that. And so I was quite aware it was me, Kathy. And all of a sudden I say, Spirit world wants to tell you. And now I had 2 ladies in front of me after about 10 minutes of sitting in the power. And all of a sudden I felt my chest come up. I felt my posture change. I actually felt like I was in some kind of a Victorian dress. I can still see what I was wearing. I had little shoes on with heels. I felt a different personality come over me. And while I was concentrating on my breathing, I was very clear that a voice came out of my mouth and spoke a very short message of inspiration. And then I felt myself lean back, and almost like this presence was gone. And shortly thereafter, I opened my eyes. And the 2 ladies that I was with as partners, they're wiping their tears. And I wasn't conscious to what was said, but clear something was said. And it was very, very moving to them. So that was first taste. So now I've got the seed planted about this world of trance. And I have some friends, Tom and Lisa Butler, who are big into electronic voice phenomena. They run the Association of Trans Communication in the world. It used to be called American Association of Electronic Voice Phenomena. And they had always told me stories of a physical medium named David Thompson. So many people have heard of David Thompson. And I looked up on YouTube, David Thompson. Now I see David Thompson, a recording of him doing a trance address. So again, this is another, like, oh my God, like other people can do this. And let me just back up about Tony Stockwell. If you don't have it, or one of your viewers doesn't have it, he's got an excellent trance CD or download that you can get on Amazon. Absolutely excellent.
I love that one.
Yeah, it's really, really good. So there I am seeing David Thompson in trance, and I thought, wow, like just great. So I look up David Thompson, and at the time he had a website up, and I was looking at that, and then he had this recommended, how everybody's website has recommended links. Mm-hmm. Well, he had Scott Milligan, physical medium. So I thought, oh, there's two of them. Now, the Tom and Lisa Butler had told me about these seances that happened in the dark. And Kathy, for my own mind, I thought, now that's way out there. Come on. That's way out there. But there was something inside me that had me want to pursue it. So I found this Scott Milligan guy on Facebook, and I sent a friend request. And he said yes. So that opened up his Facebook page to me. And he didn't know who I was. And his post on Facebook was something for Voices of the Past, something that was being held at Banyan Retreat in the United Kingdom. And it was 99% full. It was a 5-day class with trance mediumship, physical mediumship. David Thompson was going to be there. Scott Milligan was going to be there doing these seances. Plus there was exercises in mediumship, evidential mediumship. And, it was one of those moments that I thought, I want to be that last person to book this course. And so without even thinking about it, I hit register. And so that led me maybe 4 years ago to Banyan Retreat. And I tell you, that opened the world of more trance mediumship and the wonderful world of physical to me. And I'll let you speak because I know I get to be a chatty.
This is
Chatty Kathy.
I wanted to do this. I wanted to share, talk with people about their experiences. And this is what a lot of members reach out to me and say, I've never sat at a demonstration. I've never went to a seance. How does it feel? And so having you on, knowing that you've attended so many of these, and you're working with Scott Milligan, physical medium, you have all these stories and you have all these experiences to share. So somebody else that has no idea can just love it, just love hearing the story. So this is why I love hearing everything you're saying. So
thanks.
You're welcome. Thanks. I know you're doing so much work, being the ambassador and sharing this with the world, really. But before we go deeper into that, I wanted to ask you about your own sitting. I know you've had these experiences that have just pulled you in to keep you on your path or keep you in this direction now. Are you able to sit still? Are you in a circle or anything like that? Are you still doing anything for your own trance mediumship?
Well, I'd like to say I have a regular practice, but I don't. But I am sitting, so it might be before I go to bed at night, not every night, but I am sitting. I am able to quiet my mind. Not always as easy as other times. I have to say within the last 3 years, I've taken 2 week-long courses at the Arthur Findlay College just on trance. Okay, so I've got a couple really, there's different things that I learned about trance that I can talk a little to you more about, and the seances, of course, that I've been to. But for me, I know that for myself and what so many of the spiritual teachers say is the best thing that we can do is sit in the power, sit and blend with the spirit world, have the intention, quiet the mind as best we can, and just offer to the spirit world, I'm yours. I'm here. Use me as you see fit. I think the spirit world has an agenda for all of us. And if we can really offer it up to them, we will be shown the way. So I was just this past weekend in a 5-day course with a fellow named Sid Patrick, Christine Morgan, and Scott Milligan. It was in New Orleans. And I had the time free, and I just went there for my own training and development. And coming home just, I guess it was yesterday morning at 2:30 in the morning, it really is something where I know what I want. I know and have witnessed so much beautiful things from the spirit world. I know I am an ambassador to the spirit world. I know my heart and my passion lies in trance. It really does. And the only way to get there is by sitting. So what I'm left with is I really need to put that focus in place. I have built enough seance cabinets, not like you need a seance cabinet, but you don't. But if you want to sit in the dark, sometimes it's easier to blend than not. But I know for me, Kathy, that's the way to go. Because when I had those experiences at the Arthur Findlay College, I had twice, 5 days each of blending with the spirit world, working either with a partner or in front of the group, allowing the spirit world to blend with me, and the philosophy came out of my mouth. And it's so interesting because, again, could it be now 90% Sandra and 10% the spirit world? Absolutely, but maybe not, because in my own experience, for instance, at one point I was sitting in front of the whole group. And this, I tell you, this was an exercise in courage, because at the end of the first week, the instructor said, does anybody want to try to be entranced in front of the group? And I'm thinking, this is my last day. I'm at Arthur Findlay College. Nobody knows me. If I can be brave for 1 second and at least try it, you'll never know what's going to happen unless you try. So my hand went up.
I love your attitude of just being, I'm going to do it. I'm just going to do it.
Oh, it's hard though, because everything within me is saying, keep your hand down, don't do it. So I fight my own ego a lot. I mean, I do. But then sometimes it's like, you're here, nobody knows you, go for it. So with my eyes closed, it must have been at least 10 minutes that I mean, there's a lot of instruction going into this, because what we can talk about too is I think there's a difference between channeling and trance. I think channeling, we could be bringing on our own soul, and not that it's not great, but is it a person from the spirit world? Not necessarily, whereas I think trance is. So while I had this experience, I'm not sure if I was entranced or channeling, but while I was in my skin, I did everything I was told to do as far as blending. I honestly did feel that I was being surrounded by the spirit world. I felt like an energy of a man came to me. So that's what I felt. I only concentrated on my breath, and I said, Spirit wants to tell you, again, to get the mouth moving, the voice out there. And Kathy, there was a group of, I don't know if there were 20 or 30 people, but I felt myself speaking, and I felt my body turn, and like I was looking at each person with my head nodding, and I felt like I was telling a story. Now, every so often, my mind crept in, and I'm like, oh my God, and then it would stop. And then as soon as I would concentrate on my breathing again, the voice started. So I just let it happen, and then eventually I came back, and it takes a while because my body feels almost comatose. And then, I have to wiggle my toes and my fingers and slowly breathe a little deeper. And then I open my eyes. And again, everybody was crying. They told me I told a story about being like on a boat, and it's all about the journey, one of those, not about the destination, but with a lot of adjectives, a lot of things about the stormy sky and the seas and whatnot. The thing that I found most interesting is I said, because they said, how was it for you? And I said, well, it was really interesting because, every time I stopped, when I paid attention, it would stop. When I started paying attention to my breath, it would start. But I said, I was aware how much I moved, and I, was like I was working the room, talking to everybody. And they all said, Sandra, you remained perfectly still.
Oh my goodness.
I know.
Wow.
So, it's so cool, and then we did trance writing. And so we would put ourselves in that state, and then whether somebody gave us a question or we had our own question, we would just write the words that we're hearing in our mind. And all of a sudden, this philosophy is flowing from my hand. People were able to do drawings, people that don't have any artwork. One man was drawing Chinese words, symbols, and he doesn't speak Chinese. And
Oh, wow.
And the stories we heard from the instructors was just amazing. So I know within me that what that is, whether it's channeling my soul or it's spirit world stepping in, whatever that is, like I have this longing to explore that. And oh, there's also something else that's possible, but not many people know about it. I think it's called trance communication. It's where you have to be an evidential medium, but if you're also a trance medium, you can allow someone's loved one to speak through you, almost like Whoopi Goldberg let Patrick Swayze come into her for the movie Ghost.
Yeah.
And so I witnessed several of those trance communications. And again, not a dry eye in the house, because you're seeing a mother talk to her daughter again, or a father talk to her son again, or his son again. And so why I think that's not so prevalent in the world is an evidential medium has to be able to be very vulnerable to be able to work that way. And there's not a lot of evidential mediums that are sitting for trance, but I think in the future, if more people know that's possible, they may do it.
Yeah.
You know, so just great. So anyways, we can tell seance stories now if you want.
Yeah, so, I know if you can go back to like maybe the first couple times you've attended, your feelings of being there, sitting, and then having whatever happens to you or whatever you experience, can you share those for members that
Sure.
are so interested to find out what happens?
Yeah, well, there's two things. One, I think people you might not have a fear of sitting in the dark, but when you know that there's a possibility of people from the spirit world becoming real again, and you might be touched, you know, that sounds awfully scary. And then also, our skeptical mind is always watching to see how this can be fraudulent. Because over the course of history, physical mediumship was in its heyday at the end of the 1800s and early 1900s, and it disappeared except for people doing it in home circles. Most of the practicing physical mediums disappeared. There were times of war, and so many con artists came out with these so-called seances and preyed on the grieving. So unfortunately, all physical mediums got thrown out. I think that was the rise of the evidential mediums doing the verbal communications. Like we have a lot of evidential mediums or psychic mediums, whatever you want to call them in the world right now. So the skeptical mind kicks in. So as much as I wanted to believe this stuff was true, it was really hard. But over at Banyan, this great place, we all stayed at a Holiday Inn, which is across the street. And we had an opportunity, they gave us roommates, and we had an opportunity to learn about this before we even sat in our first seance. So the roommate that I was paired up with, she's like, don't be afraid. She says, they're lovely. There's so much love and inspiration. And she says, if you do get touched, they're spirit children. They invite spirit children who might have had a really terrible life on earth or never experienced Christmas to be back. So my first experience with Scott Milligan, there was this little fake Christmas tree in the center of the room. There was a circle of chairs. There was this cabinet, which, I'm intimidated by the cabinet. What's the cabinet all about? The medium sits in a chair and he gets tied down. And I thought, okay, but I had to check to make sure there's no way that this guy is going to get his hands outside of the zip ties, that he really was strapped down. And when the lights go out, we do a lot of singing. Now, singing and laughter, I have learned, is the best way to create energy for the spirit world to use. So very few individuals alive right now are practicing physical mediums. And I mean, it's a lifelong dedication of sitting in a cabinet and having people sing to you. Even it could be 10 years and nothing might happen. But in the case of Scott Milligan, what happens with him is there's a substance called ectoplasm that comes from him. It's a vapor. And then when it hits air, it can become solid. It can be something that can be manipulated. And Kathy and your viewers, I had such fear of saying the word ectoplasm and seance because I'm thinking of Ghostbusters.
Yes.
And it wasn't until I read the book, can't think of the name of it offhand, but Peter Aykroyd, which is Dan Aykroyd's father, wrote a book they are a family of spiritualists. The young Peter could remember his grandfather having seances, and he found a chest that had all these kind of stories of the people that had materialized. So Dan Aykroyd, who wrote Ghostbusters, heard the word ectoplasm a lot, and that's why he included it in the movie. So it's not the green slimy stuff as in the movie, but there really is, and it's hard to believe, a substance that can exude from the bodies of these physical mediums, and loved ones or children can step into it and become real again. So in my first physical medium seance with Scott Milligan, he goes into trance, and there's a voice that speaks through him by the name of Daniel, who is just the most loving, playful, funny person that I have met in the spirit world. And he actually acts like a master of ceremonies. He can act as a medium and tell people who, I've got this loved one stepping through and this loved one stepping through. But the beginning of this particular seance, he says, the children have arrived. And so you hear almost a pitter patter of feet. And we've stopped singing at this point. Everybody has to hold hands, because when there's ectoplasm present, it's dangerous to the medium to be like touching it or, disturbing. There's like currents of energy. In fact, many physical mediums, people have done some stupid things and they've been burnt, and it's even shortened their lifespan. So, I mean, it's a very, very real risk to these people. But I hear, Kathy, all these Christmas presents being unwrapped at the very same time. So now there's 30 of us maybe in the room holding hands, and it's like Christmas morning with a dozen children ripping into Christmas presents. Pitch black, but you can hear it. And then all of a sudden, some things have glow in the dark on them, and you can feel a stuffed animal go by your feet, or a ball hit you or your feet. And it's like these kids are playing with all these things. There's drums being pounded. There's a little xylophone that's being tapped. There's a whistle being blown. You see a hula hoop floating around the room that's being held by a spirit child. Yeah, a harmonica's being blown. I've been touched by children's spirit hands. You can feel the fingers. I have witnessed a little spirit person have a glow-in-the-dark plaque and go around and present the plaque to people, and you can see their little fingers moving. And they're black, so I don't know how the ectoplasm appears black, but it does. I guess it depends, who knows. But I've just been witness to this. And then at some point on some seances, you hear a woman singing, like at the top of her lungs. So there's an ectoplasmic voice box that forms, and this singer will come out and really exercise his vocal cord. And then Daniel, who's the master of ceremonies, after he said, okay, I've got this man here and da-da-da-da-da, and someone will say, oh yeah, that's my father. He'll ask the gentleman, would you like to try to speak to your daughter? So then he'll say, okay, mate, push your face in, and the next thing you hear is, can you hear me? Mary, this is Dad. And then Dad's telling stories to the daughter, so she knows it's really him. And it's like, oh my gosh,
Yes.
it's amazing. And love. It's not scary. It's filled with love. There's a lot of laughter, like I said, but there's words of inspiration come out. But the reunions between people and their family or their friends that I have witnessed, and of course, I can't see it, but I know it's very, very real, and people's lives are changed. Just this past couple days ago, there was a woman whose daughter had come through, and she not only verbally talked to her mother, but there's an iPad or an iPod in the room that can play music. And somehow she manipulated the iPod, that she took Tina Turner's song, the one that goes, Simply the Best, that song. She was able to just go, simply the best, you're simply the best, and keep playing that portion. She found another song that had inspiring words. She took another phrase from that song, kept playing that over and over, and then found another song, kept playing, all beautiful messages directed to the mother. But no human being on an iPod could rewind and play, and then Darren, who's the circle leader, both of his hands were on the next person. So there's no, he was manipulating it. So I think you have to actually be present in one of these circles, seances, to know for sure that it's real. Because if not, the mind will say, but maybe this guy could have done this, but I've seen the seance end, the cabinet's in the middle of the room, or the Christmas tree is outside the circle, or the medium somehow has been lifted up outside of the circle. So it's a very real thing, this ectoplasm and what it does. But as great as that may be, what's the best thing about it for an afterlife as explorer are these messages that come from loved ones. And of course, there's physical mediums that are more about doing the phenomena, and that's fine too. But I am passionate about helping people believe their loved ones are still with them. So seances are not to be feared. Got to sit in the dark for a couple hours, but it's easy. It really is. And it's
you're painting it though. It's so beautiful. Like, I mean, I could feel what you're feeling. I'm like, oh my God, can you imagine to be there and experience that? And to have somebody tell you in the very beginning, don't be afraid. It's just love. It's everything's love. And so, but the message is beautiful.
Yeah, the last one, I had sat next to a gentleman who had never been before. And at the beginning, he whispers to me, this is all so disturbing. And I thought, okay. And I just put it up to the spirit world, let this guy be left with a really great experience. Because you don't know, because our minds can go, this is a little weird. You got a voice of a strange person talking in the dark and da 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 da. And by the end of it, he was singing his lungs out. And he said, this is the best thing that I've ever experienced. So that was just nice.
It sounds beautiful.
And to be part of it, it's great.
Yes, yes. And you're still doing this work. You're still pushing it out there. What are you doing now? I mean, there's so much. If I go on Facebook and I go to your group, everywhere, I just see all these different events happening with you and Scott Milligan and other people as well. But can you share what's happening now? What are you doing with physical mediumship?
I've got some people that I've adopted into the We Don't Die family that I think have integrity, and they're doing mind-blowing things. I mentioned Sonia Rinaldi in Brazil, bringing through pictures of loved ones. My dad has appeared in a picture that was never taken as he was alive. I mean, mind-blowing how much it can help people heal from grief. There's a couple called Carrie McLeod and Philip Dykes. They're newly married couple in Scotland, who I believe are two of the very best evidential mediums. And so I've got a passion to share their work. And so we've done some online demonstrations. They've also been part of some We Don't Die live events and will continue to be, but they have a passion for teaching mediums that your mediumship readings can be even better, how to tap into your feelings to get really clear evidence, not things like I've got a M energy that feels like a man. Who am I talking about? I mean, they are so specific, because our loved ones are not energy. They are real people just living in a different reality, so to speak. And then Scott Milligan, I've adopted him as my little brother. I am so proud of him for what he creates. He does some online courses and online trance demonstrations, which are great. Most of them for charity, which is really great, for Children's Hospice, which is super nice. But we are creating several events across the United States for 2020. And we're very soon to release the first one, which is going to be We Don't Die Seattle, will be the Seattle, Washington. It'll be the weekend of June 5th, 6th, 7th. I think that's the weekend, with some workshop days. It's not going to be a big afterlife event, but it'll be a time where you can learn evidential mediumship and your psychic abilities. It's for the beginner and the advanced alike. You can be part of some seances and trance demonstrations. We'll also be doing some healing. Scott will do a presentation about the history of physical mediumship. Pretty cool stuff. So that will be for June. And then August, we're going to do something called a We Don't Die Discovery event, which I can't remember the dates off the top of my head. 11th through the 15th. I can't remember. It's a Sunday through Thursday, but it'll be Sonia Rinaldi will be coming to all of these as well. The nice lady from Brazil. And it will be a time where to be a small group and we really explore. We explore our psychic and spiritual nature. We're sitting in the dark. We're attending seances. We're working with Sonia, trying to get pictures of our own loved ones. We did this once before, and she had a humidifier putting the fog in the air and then taking the pictures of that with us. And so when those pictures came out, and of course it was all videotaped, you know, you'd see faces around us. It was just cool stuff. So that's a more hands-on kind of thing. And then in September, do you remember the Afterlife Symposium that happened a couple of years ago? Well, and then our friend Suzanne Wilson did the Soul Summit last year. There hadn't been an afterlife event planned for Phoenix, Scottsdale area. So I got the blessing from AREI to have a We Don't Die of Phoenix or Scottsdale. I don't have the venue yet planned, but to have a weekend event, and I think that's the weekend of the 18th of September. We'll find a nice hotel. It'll be a larger type thing with a bunch of speakers, all with the interests of the afterlife. So we'll have that available. And then we're planning October 26th to have a We Don't Die cruise out of Fort Lauderdale. And there'll be a seance on either side back in Fort Lauderdale, and just to go on a 5-day kind of a end of year celebration.
Oh my goodness, so busy. Okay, so where can the audience members that are watching this, where can they find all these events? Where can they sign up for them?
The home base is WeDon'tDieRadio.com. So that's the home base for all the 300 plus past episodes. There is a link saying recommended live events. Now, they're not all on there yet, but stay tuned, because within the next week or so, well, I don't know exactly when your viewer is watching this, so it could be that it's right there ready for you right now, but just stay tuned to that page and they will all come up. Also, when you do go to WeDon'tDieRadio.com, there's a pop-up that says Join Sandra's Insiders Club. And that's just a nice way of saying it's my mailing list. And I don't send too much mail, but I do send what's upcoming. So if you want to be on that list, also when you do join, it'll say, as my gift to you, read a few chapters of my book. Here's the secret, folks. It's my whole book. I don't want a price tag to stop you from getting the information about the afterlife. And also you get a free copy of that How to Survive Grief audio that I had said I created, because I'm pretty clear most people that are looking for evidence of the afterlife do so because we might have had a loved one who has transitioned into it. So I want to give you everything that I have so that you know your loved one is fine, that life after death is real, and help comfort you through grief. So WeDon'tDieRadio.com is where it's all at.
Okay, perfect. Because what happens typically after I release an interview is I get tons of messages, you know, how do I contact this person? And I always say, when this interview is released, every link that Sandra has just mentioned and other ones that we talked about in the beginning will be right underneath the interview. All the information that you need to connect with Sandra here today. And so Sandra, I loved what you shared. You shared this, I mean, the passion that you exuded, just describing your experiences, attending a seance, having your own trance mediumship experiences that really just sunk everything into you, like you have to go down this way. And so, but you give people hope too, people that are sitting. You don't have to just sit in a group. You don't. In the beginning, you can just sit on your own and keep doing that and 10 classes and do things like that. But your experiences show people that, you know, just starting out, that this could be what happens to them too. And the way you painted the pictures, oh my gosh, I'm sitting here like, okay, I'm supposed to ask Sandra questions here. I'm totally involved in her story now. So, but I loved how you share. I loved the way you described everything. And that's one of the things I wanted to do, and to help others see what it is to experience from a trance medium or sitting or a seance. And you really did it beautifully.
Oh, can I talk just briefly about how I sit for the power and trance?
Yes, please.
I just thought about those. There are two things that I think need to be said. First thing, one thing is trance healing. There is a way for us, all of us, to tap in the power of trance and help heal ourselves and our fellow person. So one of the ways, first of all, that I was trained to sit in the power, and there are many, many, many different ways. And so it's whatever works for you. But what I do is I imagine that my soul, my little light, is hiding somewhere kind of around my belly, because that's where I feel it. Scott Milligan always says, when you feel love and you feel love for somebody, or that really joyous feeling, where do you feel it? And he feels it up here. I feel it more in my belly. But he says that's where your soul resides. So I imagine that this little light is in my belly, a little bright light, kind of like when you look at the ocean and you can see the reflection of the sun, that kind of a bright light. And I imagine it growing and growing and growing and growing till it's coming out my pores. And I imagine the light being the sun, and that is my symbology of God for me. Might be universe for others, whatever that universal power is. You know, they say there are many lamps, but there is only one light. So I feel the same thing is true for different people, what they believe in as their God or universe. But I imagine that the light of the sun and the light of Sandra are blending together. And I just offer to God, to the spirit world, I'm here. My intention is to serve, and you can use me any way you want. And then what I just try to do is I focus on my breath. And then I just trust that, like plugging in your mobile phone, you know, it needs to charge so it can work. So sitting in the power is that for me. And many people have said that that's how the spirit world works on us. That's how our questions are answered. That's how we can fine tune our mediumship, work with the spirit world for trance. So in the matter of trance healing, there are nights that say I share a room with my mom at a hotel, okay? Or we travel a lot for the catering business. Mom's with me, and she's not always feeling so great. So I imagine that our energies are connected. So I kind of imagine a light or I don't know, force field around my mom and myself, that our energies are blended. I will do this sitting in the power and with the intention for spiritual healing for my mom. And so I imagine that my light is blended, and there are these little, this is for me again, these little balls of light which represent the healing power or healing people from the afterlife to come in and blend with my energy and, you know, be there and work on my mom. And they say, we've been trained that any healing that's asked for another, we're also getting healing for ourselves as well. But then again, Kathy, I just concentrate on my breathing. We need to have a still mind for them to get through and use our energy to work. Again, like that the second medium reading I tried to do, when my mind was active, nothing happened. So it's virtually impossible to keep a quiet mind, but just anytime you start to think, get back to the breath and then just trust. So I've witnessed some amazing healings with people, and, you know, people could get physical healings, they could get emotional healings, spiritual healings, different ways, but you just have to trust when you're being used as a vessel that the right thing happens, you know. But healing is a very, very, very real thing. But I think that sitting in the power, however it works for you, you have to have the intention, the request. A prayer is always good as well. It doesn't have to be a prayer from a book, just something pure. You know, let me serve could be a simple one. And then just do the best you can to quiet the mind.
I do have a question for you. Now you have that large Facebook group, the listeners of We Don't Die Radio Show.
Yeah.
You share so much in there. Do you find that most people that come in there, they're there for the interviews, they're there to heal their grief, they're there to learn more. Do you find that your members are now learning and maybe even sitting for trance healing or healing or anything like that? Do you have people reach out to you and ask you about those things more?
Yeah, all of the above. I know, and you might feel the same way. There aren't many people that I see on a day-to-day basis that buy into this world of the afterlife and spiritual healing and trance and seances. Yeah, I don't say that too much around the household, but I think we all have that. So if you go to Facebook and just type in We Don't Die listeners, there are people that listen to the shows. One of the guests might have been of interest, or more than one, and it's a place where you can just talk openly about all of this. And so yes, there are people that I've actually met that have come to whether it's the Afterlife Symposium or one of my events or someone else's events, but they start on their own spiritual development. Different strokes for different folks, they say. You know, some of the things that I am interested in, they may not be, but there are people that have had their spiritual journey kind of ignited by hearing one of the episodes, one or more. So you can dabble in things. There's people that are out there doing EVPs. There's people out there sitting for trance. There's all kinds. There's people who've started their own home circles. There's other people that have started prayer groups and things like that. So, you know, there's no right way to do life. If you follow your passions, you keep your eye on service, those things that seem interesting to you, if you can make time to sit in the power and start developing what feels right to you, there's no right or wrong way to do it. So yes, it's an open forum where people can share. And I think people need people. And that's why I think that doing these live events are good too, because then you can make some friends. And I tell you, the death of my dad was the hardest time for me. Not only did Dad die, but I was part of one of those families that everybody fought. And I still have a couple of estranged relationships for 10 years now. It's very, very, very difficult and the most painful thing in my life. But out of that and my own journey, and I feel the gifts that have been given to me and I'm so grateful for doing this show, for meeting nice people like yourself and so many of your viewers and other guests and things. But the worst thing that's happened to me, and I think with everybody, the grief has power to give us new growth and grow as a human being. And so the blessing I never saw coming was now I have the best friends of my life. I'm doing something that I really love, making a difference. Do I still have a day job that's hard? I do. But you know what? It's okay. You got to stay grounded, right? Can't live in the clouds. But out of the worst thing that's happened to me has come the best thing that's happened to me. So my advice to anybody, wherever you are, you know, give yourself some space, give yourself a pat on the back. Life can be very difficult. It's never too late to start to learn, to follow your paths. There is a spirit world around you. Your loved ones are around you. Everybody's cheering you on to have a great life. And, you know, use some of these tools, and that moment will happen for all of us that we take our last breath. It will. But it is simple as closing our eyes here and we open them again. Our loved ones are there. Even our pets are there as we cross the finish line from our life, and, you know, really know that we don't die, but your life is for a reason.
Very beautiful, Sandra. Oh my God, I am so grateful to you. I mean, I think the last time we were both kind of on this was maybe 2 years ago. I'm not sure if it was 2 years ago, but it was perfect timing. So there's something I wanted to bring up really quick. Earlier, you mentioned Eileen Davies. My interviews are kind of interesting because I'll schedule somebody, I'll get them on, and they start talking about the next person I'm potentially about to interview. All I'm doing is scheduling with Eileen right now. So it's perfect how you brought her up in your experience with her. The work that you do, the work that you do to help so many people, it's beautiful. And you being an ambassador now for something that I'm involved in, trying to get that information out there, help other people develop. And you're out there pushing physical mediumship, and you're all over. So I definitely want you guys to check out Sandra's website. It is WeDon'tDieRadio.com. Her YouTube channel.
Here's my book.
And her book,
We Don't Die.
We Don't Die. You can
Get a free copy though, if you'd like.
Copy, but I also have the link under there from Amazon. I believe you can still get that through Amazon. If you know people that are struggling with grief from losing a loved one, one of the best things you can do is join, and they're on Facebook, help them find Sandra's group, the listeners of We Don't Die Radio. I see so many people coming on there, introducing themselves, saying that this is their experience. And so many of the members come on and share and are there for them. So it's just a beautiful thing that Sandra's doing. Definitely check out all the links that I will have listed below if you want to attend any of Sandra's upcoming events. One day I hope myself to be there at one of her events. But Sandra, thank you so much. for sharing the beautiful work that you do, for helping me help others. I'm just so grateful to you today.
Oh, it's my pleasure. And thank you for all that you do too, Kathy. We
Thank you.
share like-minded souls and it makes a difference in lives. So sending lots of love to you and to your viewer. Thank you.
And
Thank
also,
you.
everybody, happy Valentine's Day.
That's right. Happy Valentine's Day. We got our red on.
We got our red on. Okay, so Sandra, you have a great rest of your day, and I will talk to you later.
Okay.